in the shimmering twilight markets of Bangkok, where lanterns glow like secrets and the Khao Phraya River whispers tales of greed, a young vendor lies dead, stabbed and poisoned. Enter Miss Jane Marple, the unassuming sleuth from Willoughby Green, whose keen eyes unravel a web of deception. A smuggler's golden Buddha, a widow's desperate lies, a doctor's deadly skill, and a tangled love affair. All converge in a dance of betrayal. Can she expose the truth before the markets fade into darkness? Uncover the mystery in murder in the twilight markets of Bangkok. Chapter 1. The Scent of Jasmine and Suspicion. In the tranquil village of Willoughby Green, where the hedgerows bloomed with dog rose and the church bell tolled with comforting regularity, Miss Jane Marple found solace in the predictable rhythms of rural life. Her cottage, with its neat garden and well-worn armchairs, was a haven for reflection, where she unravelled the small mysteries of village gossip with the same precision she applied to her knitting. So, it was with mild astonishment that she received a letter from her nephew, Raymond West, now a travel writer of some repute, urging her to join him in Bangkok for a literary festival. "The twilight markets are a marvel, Aunt Jane," he wrote in his exuberant scrawl, "and I dare say a change of air will do you good." Miss Marple, though wary of exotic climes, sensed an opportunity to observe human nature in a new setting. With a slight smile, she packed her sensible shoes and a skein of wool and set off for Thailand. Bangkok greeted her with a humid embrace, its air heavy with the mingled scents of jasmine, grilled satay, and the faint tang of the Khao Phraya River. Raymond, ever the enthusiastic guide, met her at the airport, his eyes alight with the thrill of adventure. "You'll love the markets, Aunt," he said, guiding her through the city's labyrinthine streets to a bustling riverside quay. The twilight market stretched along the water's edge, a kaleidoscope of glowing lanterns, silk awnings, and vendors calling out in melodic Thai. Stalls brimmed with carved Buddhas, shimmering fabrics, and trays of mango-sticky rice, while the river reflected the flickering lights like a mirror of stars. Miss Marple, her straw hat slightly askew, absorbed it all with quiet fascination, her sharp eyes noting the interplay of locals and foreigners, each with their own stories etched in their gestures. At a teak-panelled tea-house overlooking the river, Raymond introduced her to a small group of festival attendees. A motley assembly bound by their shared presence in this vibrant chaos. Clara Henshaw, a British widow in her 50s, presided over the group with the air of one accustomed to command. Her antique shop in Bangkok was renowned, but her sharp tongue and penchant for gossip suggested a woman guarding her own vulnerabilities. Dr. Somchai, a retired Thai physician, sipped his tea with measured calm, his dark eyes twinkling as he posed riddles to amuse the table. His gentle demeanour belied a mind Miss Marple suspected was as precise as a scalpel. Elise Dubois, a French artist with a cascade of auburn hair, exuded charm but seemed distracted, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup as if sketching an unseen worry. Martin Crane, an American businessman with a loud tie and louder voice, dominated the conversation with tales of his import-export ventures, though his brashness struck Miss Marple as a mask for unease. Their host, Mr. Virote, a Thai silk merchant of impeccable manners, welcomed them with bowls of fragrant tea, his smile warm but his gaze fleeting, as if scanning for an unseen threat. As the group exchanged pleasantries, Miss Marple listened, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her mind cataloguing their words and silences. Clara mentioned a rare jade pendant, recently acquired for her shop, with a proprietary pride that bordered on obsession. Dr. Somchai spoke of the market's history, his voice soft but authoritative, while Elise's laughter rang a touch too bright when Martin boasted of his latest deal. Virota, deftly steering the conversation, praised the festival's cultural exchange, yet Miss Marple noted how his fingers tightened around his teacup when a vendor passed by, a young man with a tray of amulets. The evening's tranquility shattered with a piercing cry from the market. A crowd gathered near a stall piled with carved trinkets, and Raymond, ever curious, led Miss Marple to the scene. There, behind a curtain of woven bamboo, lay Aaron, a young vendor known for his rare amulets. He was slumped against a crate, a slender knife protruding from his chest, his eyes wide in a frozen stare. The air grew thick with the murmurs of onlookers, and the scent of jasmine was overtaken by the metallic tang of blood. Miss Marple, her expression serene but her mind alert, observed the group's reactions as they joined the throng. Clara's hand flew to her throat, her face pale beneath her rouge. Dr. Somchai knelt briefly by the body, his physician's instincts surfacing, though he stepped back with a murmur of regret. Elise's eyes darted to Martin, who stood rigid, his jaw clenched. Virote, arriving last, muttered something in Thai and slipped toward his boat, his movements swift but not unnoticed. The Thai police arrived, led by Inspector Chai, a wiry man with a no-nonsense air. He cordoned off the stall and began questioning vendors, his officers weaving through the crowd like threads in a loom. Miss Marple, standing slightly apart, adjusted her shawl and murmured to Raymond, "A tragedy, no doubt, but I suspect not a random one." Her eyes lingered on the group, each member a stitch in the pattern of this unfolding mystery. In Willoughby Green, she had once solved a theft by noting a gardener's muddy boots. Here, in the Twilight markets, she sensed the same human frailties at play. "People," she said softly, "are much the same, whether under English oaks or Thai lanterns." As the river lapped against the quay, Miss Marple's mind began to thread the first clues together, her quiet presence belying the sharpness of her scrutiny. Chapter 2. The web of motives. The morning sun cast a golden haze over the Cow Friar River, its waters shimmering like the silk scarves sold in the Twilight markets. Miss Jane Marple, seated on a wicker chair at the guest house's veranda, sipped a cup of jasmine tea, her knitting needles clicking softly in rhythm with her thoughts. The previous night's tragedy, the brutal murder of young Aaron, found with a knife in his chest behind his amulet stall, had cast a pall over the literary festival. Yet the markets buzzed on, their resilience a testament to the city's pulse. To Miss Marple, this tenacity mirrored the stubborn persistence of human secrets, much like those she had unravelled in Willoughby Green, where a vicar's whispered confession once solved a poisoning. Raymond West joined her, his usual exuberance tempered by the previous evening's shock. "Aunt Jane," he said, settling opposite her, "the police seem convinced it's a robbery gone wrong. Inspector Chai's men are scouring the market for stolen goods." Miss Marple's eyes, bright and bird-like, met his over her spectacles. "Ah, robbery perhaps," she murmured, "but I suspect the motive lies deeper, like a root beneath a rosebush. In Willoughby Green, a stolen purse once hid a far graver crime." Raymond, accustomed to her cryptic wisdom, leaned forward as she continued. "Tell me about this Aaron. What sort of boy was he?" Raymond recounted what he knew. Aaron, barely 20, was a local vendor with a knack for sourcing rare amulets, his stall a magnet for collectors and tourists. Recently, he had boasted of a big deal that promised wealth, though he guarded the details. Ambitious, Raymond said, and perhaps too bold for his own good. Miss Marple nodded, her needles pausing. Ambition, she said, is a spark that can light a fire, or burn the one who carries it. Her mind drifted to a Willoughby Green baker, whose greed for a rival's recipe led to a scandal. Ambition, she knew, often bred enemies. The festival's schedule pressed on, and Raymond escorted Miss Marple to a morning lecture at a riverside pavilion, where the group from the tea house gathered. Clara Henshaw, the British widow, sat ramrod straight, her lips pursed, as if guarding a bitter secret. Her antique shop, Miss Marple learned, was a treasure trove of relics, but its finances were precarious. Dr. Somchai, the retired physician, listened to the speaker with an air of detached amusement, his fingers tracing the edge of a notebook filled with cryptic scribbles. Elise Dubois, the French artist, sketched idly in a corner. Her delicate features taut with an emotion Miss Marple couldn't yet place. Martin Crane, the American businessman, fidgeted, his loud tie clashing with the pavilion's serene decor. Mr. Virot, the silk merchant, was absent, attending to urgent business, though his absence felt to Miss Marple like a thread deliberately pulled from view. As the lecture ended, Inspector Chai arrived, his sharp eyes scanning the group. He announced that Aaron's stall had been searched, revealing no missing amulets, but a curious absence of cash, despite his recent boasts of prosperity. Miss Marple, feigning absorption in her knitting, listened as Clara interjected, "That boy was always trouble. He sold me a jade pendant last month, then claimed it was his all along. A thief, mark my words." Her voice carried the indignation of one wronged, but Miss Marple noted the tremor in her hands, a telltale sign of fear rather than righteousness. In Willoughby Green, a spinster's nervous fidgeting had once betrayed her part in a theft. Clara, Miss Marple thought, bore watching. Dr. Somchai, approached by Chai, mentioned treating Aaron for a minor ailment weeks prior. "He complained of fatigue," Somchai said, his tone measured, "but I found nothing serious. Youthful nerves, perhaps." Miss Marple's needles clicked faster. A doctor's dismissal, she mused, could mask knowledge or intent. She recalled a Willoughby Green apothecary who had misdiagnosed a patient to hide his own misdeeds. Elise, overhearing, added softly, "Aaron was restless. I saw him with Martin at the market late one night, talking heatedly." Martin's head snapped up, his face reddening. "Nonsense!" he barked. "I barely knew the boy. He pestered me about some business venture, that's all." Elise's eyes dropped to her sketchbook, and Miss Marple noted the faint flush on her cheeks. A sign, perhaps, of a truth half-spoken. Seeking air, Miss Marple strolled with Raymond to the market, where vendors were resetting their stalls under the watchful eyes of Chai's officers. Aaron's stall, now cordoned off, stood like a silent witness, its amulets untouched, but its cashbox empty. A nearby vendor, an elderly woman selling lotus flowers, whispered to Raymond that Aaron had been different lately, secretive and flush with money. "He spoke of a golden prize," she said, "but feared someone watching him." Miss Marple's interest sharpened. A golden prize, she thought, could be literal or metaphorical, but it was a thread worth pulling. She recalled a Willoughby Green farmer who boasted of a prize cow, only to be caught smuggling. Boasts, she knew, often hid truths. At a quiet stall selling herbal teas, Miss Marple paused to chat with the vendor, a wiry man with a knowing smile. He revealed that Aaron had recently argued with Clara over the jade pendant's provenance, claiming it was stolen from a temple. Clara, he said, had been furious, her shop's reputation at stake. Miss Marple thanked him, her mind weaving connections. Clara's desperation, she thought, could drive her to extremes, much like a Willoughby Green seamstress who once sabotaged a rival's work. Returning to the guest house, Miss Marple overheard a fragment of conversation between Elise and Martin on the veranda. "You should have stayed out of it," Elise whispered, her voice sharp. Martin's reply was gruff. "I didn't sign up for this." Their words, cut short by Miss Marple's approach, hung in the air like the scent of jasmine. That afternoon, Inspector Chai shared a new clue. A scrap of silk, stained with blood, found near Aaron's body. It matched the weave of Virote's stall, though Virote, now returned, claimed it was common stock sold to many. His charm was polished, but Miss Marple noted the sweat on his brow, a detail as telling as a Willoughby Green grocer's stammer when caught short-changing. "Motives," she said to Raymond as they dined on mango and rice, "are like threads in a tapestry. Each pulls another into view." Raymond, puzzled but intrigued, pressed her for more, but she only smiled. "Patience, my dear," she said. "In Bangkok, as in Willoughby Green, the truth reveals itself to those who watch." As dusk fell, the markets glowed again, their lanterns casting shadows that danced like secrets. Miss Marple, her knitting tucked away, felt the weight of the mystery settling around her. Clara's anger, Somchai's calm, Elise's unease, Martin's bluster, and Virote's evasion formed a web, with Aaron's death at its centre. "Human nature," she murmured, "is the same under any sky." The river lapped softly, and Miss Marple's mind, sharp as her needles, began to trace the pattern of a crime far more intricate than a simple robbery. Chapter 3. The Shadow of the Past. The morning air along the Chao Phraya River carried a faint mist, softening the edges of the Twilight market's vibrant chaos. Miss Jane Marple, seated on a cushioned bench aboard a long-tail boat, watched the water ripple past as Raymond West guided their group on a temple tour organized by the Literary Festival. The murder of Aaron, the young amulet vendor, stabbed in the heart of the market, lingered like a shadow over the group. Though the festival's schedule pressed forward with relentless cheer. Miss Marple, her hands folded neatly over her knitting bag, found the boat's gentle sway conducive to thought. In Willoughby Green, she had once solved a theft by noting a maid's hesitant glance. Here, in Bangkok's humid embrace, she sensed the past held keys to the present crime. The group from the tea house, Clara Henshaw, Dr. Somchai, Elise Dubois, Martin Crane, and Mr. Virote, sat scattered across the boat, their faces a study in guarded expressions. Clara, her hat tilted against the sun, spoke sharply of the market's declining standards, her voice betraying a brittleness Miss Marple associated with fear of exposure. Dr. Somchai, his eyes fixed on the passing temples, murmured about their spiritual significance, though his hands clenched the boat's rail as if anchoring himself against scrutiny. Iltis, sketching the riverbank's golden spires, seemed lost in thought, her pencil pausing when Martin, nearby, muttered about the heat. Virota, ever the gracious host, pointed out landmarks with practised ease. But Miss Marple noted his glances toward the shore, as if expecting an unwelcome visitor. At Wat Arun, the Temple of Dawn, the group disembarked, their footsteps echoing on the stone steps. Miss Marple, feigning fatigue, lingered near a shaded alcove, where she overheard Martin whispering to Elise, "We need to talk, alone." Elise's reply was sharp, "Not here, not now." Their exchange, cut short by Raymond's call to rejoin the group, intrigued Miss Marple. In Willoughby Green, a hushed conversation between a butcher and a schoolteacher had unravelled a blackmail scheme. Secrets, she knew, thrived in whispers. Seeking insight into Aaron's life, Miss Marple slipped away to speak with a monk tending the temple's incense burners. His serene face brightened at Aaron's name, though sorrow clouded his eyes. "Aaron was a good boy," he said, his English halting but clear. "He brought offerings, asked for blessings, but lately he was troubled. He spoke of a golden treasure, a statuette, sacred, that brought danger." The monk's voice dropped. "He said someone close betrayed him, someone he trusted." Miss Marple thanked him, her mind turning to betrayal's familiar sting. In Willoughby Green, a betrayed wife had once hidden her pain behind a smile. Here, Aaron's fear suggested a deeper web. Rejoining the group, Miss Marple observed Clara examining a temple carving, her fingers tracing its lines with a collector's intensity. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Miss Marple said, her tone disarming. Clara started, then nodded. "I deal in such things," she said, "but they're often more trouble than they're worth." Her words, meant to be casual, carried a defensive edge. Miss Marple recalled the vendor's tale of Clara's dispute with Aaron over a jade pendant allegedly stolen from a temple. Could the golden treasure be another such relic? She filed the thought away, her eyes drifting to Dr. Somchai, who stood apart, studying a prayer wheel with undue focus. At the next temple, Wat Pho, Miss Marple engaged Somchai in conversation, her questions gentle but probing. "You knew Aaron well, Doctor?" she asked, adjusting her shawl. Somchai's smile was measured. "Only as a patient. He was anxious, nothing more." Yet his fingers twitched, a detail Miss Marple noted. She recalled a Willoughby Green doctor whose nervous habits betrayed his involvement in a forged will. Anxiety, she said, can stem from many causes. Guilt, perhaps, or fear of discovery. Somchai's smile faltered, but he turned the subject to the temple's reclining Buddha, his erudition a shield. The group lunched at a riverside cafe, where Miss Marple steered the conversation to Aaron's golden treasure. Raymond, eager to assist, mentioned hearing of a rare golden Buddha statuette, rumoured to be cursed, circulating among collectors. Clara's fork paused mid-air, her lips tightening. "Superstition!" she scoffed, but her eyes darted to Virot, who was refilling his glass with studied calm. Elise, sketching a napkin, let slip. "Aaron mentioned something valuable to me once, but I thought he was exaggerating." Martin, quick to interrupt, said, "The boy was full of tall tales. No one takes such talk seriously." Miss Marple's gentle smile hid her interest. In Willoughby Green, a farmer's tall tale had led to a hidden stash of stolen silver. After lunch, Miss Marple and Raymond visited a market stall run by Aaron's cousin Lek, a wiry youth with wary eyes. Lek revealed that Aaron had recently come into money, enough to buy a motorbike, but refused to say how. He was scared, Lek admitted, said someone was following him after he got that statuette. When pressed, Lek described a heated exchange between Aaron and Virot near the silk stall, where Aaron accused Virot of cutting him out. Miss Marple's interest sharpened. A business dispute, she thought, could turn deadly, much like a Willoughby Green grocer's feud over a delivery contract that ended in sabotage. Back at the guest house, Miss Marple learned from Inspector Chai of a new discovery. A small vial, empty but smelling faintly of bitter almonds, found hidden in Aaron's stall. Poison, perhaps, Chai said, though the knife was the cause of death. Miss Marple's mind raced. Poison suggested premeditation, a crime cloaked in another. She recalled a Willoughby Green poisoning case, where a second weapon distracted from the true method. Curious, she murmured to Raymond, that someone took such care to ensure Aaron's silence. Chai mentioned the vial's origin was unclear, but its presence hinted at someone with access to rare substances, perhaps a physician like Somchai. As evening fell, the markets glowed with lanterns, and Miss Marple sat on the veranda, her knitting resumed. The group's interactions replayed in her mind: Martin and Elise's secretive exchange, Clara's defensiveness, Somchai's guarded calm, Virot's evasion, and Lek's tale of betrayal. The golden statuette, she sensed, was the thread binding them, its shadow cast by a past none wished to reveal. In Willoughby Green, she told Raymond, the past always catches up, like a shadow you cannot outrun. I suspect Bangkok is no different. Her needles clicked, each stitch a step closer to the truth, as the river's murmur carried the weight of secrets yet to be unveiled. Chapter 4. The Silk Thread. The twilight markets of Bangkok pulsed with life as dusk settled, their lanterns casting a warm glow over stalls laden with treasures and trinkets. Miss Jane Marple, her straw hat tilted against the evening's humidity, strolled arm in arm with Raymond West, her keen eyes scanning the crowd with the same quiet scrutiny she once applied to Willoughby Green's village green. The murder of Aaron, the young amulet vendor stabbed and possibly poisoned, hung over the literary festival like a monsoon cloud, yet the markets thrived, their rhythm unbroken. To Miss Marple, this resilience echoed the stubborn secrecy of human hearts, much like a Willoughby Green widow who concealed her grief behind a cheerful facade. Raymond, ever eager to assist his aunt's inquiries, recounted a market rumour. Aaron had been seen handling a small, ornate box days before his death, its contents unknown, but whispered to be valuable. The vendors say it was locked, Raymond added, and Aaron kept it hidden. Miss Marple's lips pursed thoughtfully. A locked box, she murmured, is like a locked heart. Both guard secrets, but neither is impervious. Her mind drifted to a Willoughby Green postmaster who hid stolen letters in a locked drawer, betrayed by a single careless key. Their walk led to Mr. Virot's silk stall, its shelves draped with shimmering fabrics in shades of saffron and emerald. Virot, his smile as polished as his wares, was absent, but a young assistant tended the stall, arranging bolts of silk with practiced care. Miss Marple, feigning interest in a scarf, leaned closer to inspect a wooden panel behind the counter. A faint seam suggested a hidden compartment, and when the assistant stepped away to serve another customer, she pressed it lightly. The panel clicked, revealing a narrow recess containing a small, leather-bound book. Before she could examine it, Virot appeared, his eyes narrowing briefly before his charm returned. "Miss Marple, admiring my silks?" he asked, sliding the panel shut. "Just accounts," he added, his tone too casual. Miss Marple smiled sweetly, apologizing for her curiosity, but her mind catalogued his haste, much like a Willoughby Green shopkeeper's panic when caught hoarding rationed goods. At the guest house, Miss Marple joined the group for a festival dinner, the air thick with jasmine and tension. Clara Henshaw, her antique shop's troubles weighing heavily, toyed with her napkin, her eyes darting to Virote as he spoke of the market's history. Dr. Somchai, seated beside her, offered a riddle about a hidden treasure. His calm demeanour unshaken even as Inspector Chai's officers patrolled nearby. Elise Dubois, her auburn hair catching the candlelight, laughed too brightly at Raymond's anecdotes, while Martin Crane, his tie loosened, drank deeply from his glass, his gaze flickering to Elise. Miss Marple, her hands folded demurely, noted these undercurrents, her thoughts weaving a pattern as intricate as Virote's silks. Inspector Chai joined them briefly, sharing a startling find. The vial from Aaron's stall, scented with bitter almonds, contained traces of a rare toxin, slow-acting and subtle, requiring medical expertise to procure. The knife was the final blow, Chai said, but the poison began the work. Miss Marple's needles resting in her lap seemed to pause in sympathy. Poison, she thought, was a coward's weapon, yet cunning, like a Willoughby Green chemist who laced a tonic with malice. Her eyes drifted to Somchai, whose fingers traced the rim of his glass, his face betraying nothing but a faint smile. After dinner, Miss Marple engaged Elise in conversation, complimenting her sketches of the market. "You capture the spirit of this place," she said, her tone gentle. Elise flushed, admitting she had sketched Aaron once, his face lit by a lantern. As he spoke with Martin near the river, "They seemed intense," she said, then hesitated, as if regretting her words. Miss Marple nodded, recalling a Willoughby Green artist whose sketches revealed more than intended. "Art," she said, "sees what words conceal." Elise's eyes widened, but she turned away, her fingers crumpling a napkin. Later, Miss Marple and Raymond visited a quiet corner of the market, where a spice vendor, an elderly woman with a weathered face, shared a tale of Aaron's recent behaviour. "He was nervous," she said, grinding cardamom with a pestle. "He spoke of a debt, said someone owed him greatly, but wouldn't pay. When pressed, she mentioned seeing Aaron near Virote's stall, his voice raised in anger. He said, 'You can't cut me out,' she whispered. Miss Marple thanked her, her mind turning to debts unpaid, a motive as old as a Willoughby Green farmer's grudge over a land deal. At the guest house, Miss Marple overheard a tense exchange between Clara and Martin on the veranda. "You knew about it, didn't you?" Clara hissed, her voice low but sharp. Martin's reply was gruff. "Keep your voice down. It's not what you think." Their words faded as they noticed Miss Marple's approach, but she caught Martin's glance toward the river, where Virot's boat bobbed in the darkness. She recalled a Willoughby Green quarrel overheard in a churchyard, which led to a confession of theft. Here the stakes felt higher. Before retiring, Miss Marple spoke with Inspector Chai, who revealed another clue. A single silk thread, fine and golden, found caught on a splinter near Aaron's body. It matched the weave of Virote's premium stock, though Virote insisted such threads were common. Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Common," she said, "yet distinctive, like a voice in a crowd." She thanked Chai, her mind weaving the thread into the growing tapestry of the case. Virote's hidden book, the poison's rarity, Elise's sketch, Clara's accusation, and the spice vendor's tale formed a pattern. Each clue a stitch in a design only Miss Marple could see. As she sat by her window, the river reflecting the market's glow, Miss Marple's thoughts turned to human nature. "In Willoughby Green," she murmured to Raymond, who lingered nearby, "a single thread unravelled a theft. Here, I suspect it may unravel a murder." Raymond, half amused, half intrigued, pressed her for details, but she only smiled. "Patience, my dear," she said. "The truth, like silk, is delicate but strong." Her needles resumed their rhythm, each click a step closer to the heart of the mystery. As the night deepened and the markets hummed with secrets yet to be unwound. Chapter 5. The Lantern's Light. The twilight markets of Bangkok glowed with 1,000 lanterns, their flickering light dancing on the Khao Phraya River, like fireflies on a summer night in Willoughby Green. Miss Jane Marple, seated on a cushioned stool at the festival's lantern ceremony, watched as paper lanterns floated skyward, each carrying a wish or a prayer. The murder of Aaron, the young amulet vendor stabbed and poisoned in the market's heart, cast a shadow over the festivities, yet the crowd pressed on, their voices a chorus of hope and commerce. To Miss Marple, the lantern's ascent mirrored the slow rise of truth, fragile yet persistent, much like a Willoughby Green scandal that surfaced after years of whispers. Raymond West, at her side, described the ceremony's significance, his voice tinged with awe. "They say the lanterns carry away misfortune," he said, "but I doubt they'll lift this gloom." Miss Marple's eyes, bright behind her spectacles, scanned the group from the tea-house, gathered nearby on a riverside platform. Clara Henshaw, her face taut beneath a wide-brimmed hat, clutched a lantern as if it might anchor her. Dr. Somchai, his hand steady, lit his with a physician's precision, though his gaze lingered on the crowd. Elise Dubois, her auburn hair aglow in the lantern light, released hers with a trembling hand, her eyes meeting Martin Crane's for a fleeting moment. Martin, his usual bluster subdued, stood apart, his face shadowed. Mr. Virote, resplendent in a silk jacket, supervised the ceremony with charm, but Miss Marple noted his restless fingers, betraying unease beneath his poise. As the lanterns rose, Inspector Chai approached, his wiry frame cutting through the crowd. He confided to Miss Marple that the knife found in Aaron's chest had been traced to Martin Crane's hotel room, a discovery that sent murmurs through the group. Martin, overhearing, protested loudly, his voice carrying over the river's murmur. "It's a frame-up," he declared, his tie askew. "I never touched that knife." Chai's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, his silence as probing as Miss Marple's questions. She noted Elise's quick glance at Martin, her lips parting as if to speak, then closing in hesitation. In Willoughby Green, a gardener's denial had once unravelled under such a glance. Here, Miss Marple sensed a thread of complicity. Seeking solitude, Miss Marple slipped away to a quiet stall, selling lotus-shaped lanterns, where she engaged the vendor, a wiry woman with a knowing smile, in conversation. The woman, named Mali, revealed that Aaron had been seen with Martin 2 nights before his death, near a darkened jetty, exchanging a small package. "Aaron looked scared," Mali said, folding her lantern's delicate petals. "He said the deal was bigger than he thought." Miss Marple thanked her, her mind turning to the locked box Raymond had mentioned. A package, she thought, could hold many secrets, much like a Willoughby Green parcel that concealed stolen jewels. Returning to the ceremony, Miss Marple approached Martin, her tone gentle as she inquired about his business ventures. "I understand Aaron sought your advice," she said, adjusting her shawl. Martin's jaw tightened, but he admitted Aaron had proposed a deal involving a valuable item, a golden Buddha statuette, rumoured to be ancient. "I told him I wasn't interested," Martin said, his voice gruff. "Too risky." Miss Marple smiled, noting a golden silk thread caught on his cuff, its sheen matching Virote's premium weave. "Risk," she said, "often tempts the bold." Martin turned away, but not before she saw a flicker of fear in his eyes, reminiscent of a Willoughby Green merchant caught in a lie. At the guest house later, Miss Marple joined Raymond for tea, where Clara, agitated, complained of the festival's disruptions. "This murder has ruined everything," she said, her fingers twisting a jade bracelet. Miss Marple, recalling Clara's dispute with Aaron over a pendant, asked innocently, "Did Aaron ever offer you such a statuette?" Clara's face paled. "He mentioned it once," she admitted, "but I deal in legitimate antiques." Her defensiveness, Miss Marple thought, echoed a Willoughby Green widow's denial of a stolen heirloom. Dr. Somchai, joining them, spoke of the toxin found in Aaron's vial, confirming Chai's findings. "It's rare," he said, his tone academic, "used in small doses for pain, but deadly in excess." Miss Marple's needles resting in her lap seemed to pause in respect. "Such knowledge," she said, "requires great care." Somchai's smile was serene, but his fingers tapped his cup, a gesture Miss Marple filed away, much like a Willoughby Green doctor's tic that betrayed his guilt. Elise, sketching nearby, dropped a folded letter as she rose to leave. Miss Marple, retrieving it, glimpsed the words "golden statue" and "meet me" before Elise snatched it back, claiming it was a draft for a friend. "You're observant," Elise said, her laugh nervous. Miss Marple smiled, recalling a Willoughby Green artist whose letters revealed an affair. "Observation," she said, "is merely seeing what others overlook." That night, Miss Marple revisited the market with Raymond, pausing at Aaron's shuttered stall. A street boy, sweeping nearby, whispered that he'd seen Virote arguing with Aaron hours before the murder, near a pile of crates. "Aaron said, 'You'll pay one way or another,'" the boy recounted. Miss Marple rewarded him with a coin, her mind weaving the thread of Virot's debt into the pattern. A debt, she thought, could drive a man to desperation, as it had a Willoughby Green baker who sabotaged a rival. As the lanterns dimmed, Miss Marple sat by the river, her knitting untouched. The clues, Martin's knife, the silk thread, the poison, Elise's letter, Virote's argument, Clara's defensiveness, formed a constellation, each point a secret illuminated by the lantern's light. "In Willoughby Green," she told Raymond, "a single spark lit up a hidden truth. Here, these lanterns do the same." Raymond, intrigued, pressed for her theory, but she shook her head. "Truth," she said, "rises like a lantern, but it must be guided." Her eyes followed a final lantern drifting skyward, its glow a promise of revelations to come, as the river whispered secrets of its own. Chapter 6. The Unravelling. The twilight markets of Bangkok shimmered under a velvet sky, their lanterns casting a soft glow that belied the tension coiling beneath the festival's facade. Miss Jane Marple, seated at a teak table in the guest house's open-air lounge, sipped a cup of lemongrass tea, her knitting needles idle in her lap. The murder of Aaron, the young amulet vendor stabbed and poisoned in the market's heart, had woven a web of suspicion around the group from the tea-house, and Miss Marple sensed the threads were beginning to fray. In Willoughby Green, a single loose stitch in a seamstress's tale had unravelled a theft. Here, she felt, the truth was similarly poised to unravel. Raymond West, ever attentive, joined her, his face alight with curiosity. "Aunt Jane," he said, "Inspector Chai seems stumped. The knife in Martin's room and that poison vial haven't led to an arrest." Miss Marple's eyes, sharp behind her spectacles, met his. "The truth, my dear," she said, "is like a knot, tightly bound until the right thread is pulled." Her mind turned to the clues accumulated. The golden silk thread, the hidden book in Virote's stall, Elise's dropped letter, the poison's rarity, and Aaron's heated words with Virote. Each, she thought, was a stitch in a tapestry of deceit. The festival's programme included a midday tea at a riverside pavilion, where Miss Marple orchestrated a gathering of the suspects, her frail appearance belying her purpose. Clara Henshaw arrived first, her posture rigid, her jade bracelet glinting as she stirred her tea with unnecessary vigour. Dr. Somchai, his calm demeanour unshaken, offered a cryptic remark about the river's flow mirroring life's secrets. Elise Dubois, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, avoided Martin Crane's gaze, while Martin, his tie conspicuously subdued, fidgeted with his spoon. Mr. Virote, late as usual, exuded charm but seemed distracted, his eyes scanning the pavilion's entrance. Miss Marple, steering the conversation with the ease of a Willoughby Green hostess, mentioned the golden Buddha statuette Aran had boasted of. The effect was immediate. Clara's spoon clattered, Somchai's smile tightened, Elise's fingers gripped her cup. Martin coughed abruptly, and Virota's hand paused mid-gesture. "A curious item," Miss Marple said, her tone mild. "It seems to have stirred many hearts." Clara, recovering, snapped, "Aaron was a dreamer, always chasing fantasies." Yet her flush betrayed her, much like a Willoughby Green shopkeeper caught inflating prices. Seizing the moment, Miss Marple revealed a discovery, her voice deceptively soft. "I happened upon a book in Mr. Virote's stall," she said, "listing payments to Aaron, sums far beyond a vendor's earnings." Virote's smile faltered, his fingers brushing his silk jacket. "Loans," he said quickly, "to help a struggling boy." Miss Marple nodded, but her eyes noted his unease, reminiscent of a Willoughby Green landlord whose ledger hid illicit rents. "Loans," she murmured, combined as tightly as chains. Turning to Somchai, she mentioned the poison vial, its contents requiring medical expertise. "Such a substance," she said, "suggests a mind both cautious and cunning." Somchai laughed, a touch too heartily. "Many know of such things," he said, "but few would misuse them." His fingers, however, tapped his saucer, a tick Miss Marple had seen in a Willoughby Green chemist, caught tampering with prescriptions. She smiled, letting the silence press. Elise, unnerved, admitted to writing the letter Miss Marple had glimpsed, claiming it was a warning to Martin about Aaron's risky dealings. "I wanted him to stay clear," she said, her voice unsteady. Martin, his face reddening, confirmed this, but his eyes avoided hers, a detail Miss Marple noted. In Willoughby Green, a lover's quarrel had once revealed a hidden pact. Here, she sensed a similar alliance, strained by fear. After tea, Miss Marple and Raymond strolled to a market stall selling carved Buddhas, where a vendor, a grizzled man named Somsak, shared a new detail. Aaron, he said, had bragged of outsmarting a big man in a deal, showing Somsak a key to a locked box hidden in his stall. He said it held his fortune, Somsak whispered, but he feared for his life. Miss Marple thanked him, her mind turning to the ornate box Raymond had mentioned. A key, she thought, could unlock more than a box, much like a Willoughby Green key that opened a chest of stolen deeds. At the guest house, Miss Marple learned from Inspector Chai of a witness, a boatman, who saw Virote near Aaron's stall the night of the murder, carrying a small bundle. Virote, confronted, claimed it was silk samples, but his voice wavered. Miss Marple recalled a Willoughby Green farmer caught with a bundle of poached game. Excuses, she knew, often cloaked guilt. Chai also revealed that the knife, though found in Martin's room, bore no fingerprints, suggesting a careful hand. That evening, Miss Marple sat alone on the veranda, the river's murmur a counterpoint to her thoughts. The clues, Virote's ledger, the poison source, Elise's letter, Martin's knife, the boatman's sighting, and Aaron's key formed a pattern, intricate yet incomplete. She recalled a Willoughby Green mystery, where a single lie unravelled a conspiracy. Here the lies were many, but the truth was near. Human nature, she murmured, weaves its own trap. Raymond, joining her, pressed for her thoughts, but she only smiled. The web is fraying, she said. One pull, and it will collapse. As the market's lanterns dimmed, Miss Marple's mind traced the threads. Clara's desperation, Somchai's expertise, Elise and Martin's secrecy, Virote's debts. The golden statuette, she sensed, was the knot binding them, its value a motive for murder. Her needles, resumed at last, clicked softly, each stitch a step toward the final unravelling, as the river carried whispers of a truth ready to break free. Chapter 7. The Truth in the Twilight. The twilight markets of Bangkok glowed with their final flourish, the lanterns casting a golden haze over the Chao Phraya River as the literary festival drew to a close. Miss Jane Marple, standing quietly by a riverside quay, watched the crowds ebb and flow, her straw hat tilted against the evening's warmth. The murder of Aaron, the young amulet vendor, stabbed and poisoned in the market's heart, had woven a tapestry of suspicion around the tea-house group. And Miss Marple sensed the threads were ready to be drawn tight. In Willoughby Green, a single confession had once unravelled a village conspiracy. Here, under Bangkok's flickering lights, she prepared to unveil the truth. Inspector Chai, at her request, gathered the suspects: Clara Henshaw, Dr. Somchai, Elise Dubois, Martin Crane, and Mr. Virote, at a lantern-lit clearing near Aaron's shuttered stall. The air was thick with jasmine and anticipation, the river's murmur a soft counterpoint to the tension. Raymond West stood beside his aunt, his curiosity piqued, while Chai's officers formed a discreet perimeter. Miss Marple, her knitting bag at her side, began in her gentle, disarming tone, her words as precise as her stitches. Murder, she said, is a pattern, woven from greed, fear, and betrayal. Let us unravel it. She turned first to the golden Buddha statuette, the treasure Aaron had boasted of. It was no mere trinket, she said, her eyes scanning the group. It was a sacred relic, smuggled from a temple, its value immense, but its curse real, for it brought death. Clara's hand tightened on her jade bracelet. Somchai's smile faded. Elise's breath caught. Martin shifted uneasily, and Virote's charm wavered. Miss Marple continued, detailing Aaron's ambition. He stumbled upon a smuggling ring, she said, and sought to profit, blackmailing the one who led it. Her gaze settled on Virote. Mr. Virote, your silk trade is a facade for darker dealings. The ledger I found in your stall listed payments to Aaron, not loans but hush money, to keep him silent about the statuette you smuggled." Virote's face paled. His protest cut short as Miss Marple raised a hand. The golden silk thread, caught near Aaron's body, was yours, rare, from your premium stock. The boatman saw you near the stall that night, carrying a bundle, not silk, but the statuette you meant to hide. In Willoughby Green, a farmer's hidden sack had betrayed him. Here, Virote's bundle was his undoing. Miss Marple turned to the poison, its rarity a key. "Aaron was poisoned before the knife struck," she said, "a slow toxin disguised as illness, requiring a skilled hand." Her eyes met Somchai's. "Dr. Somchai, your medical expertise gave you access to such a substance. You treated Aaron's fatigue, but it was your poison at work, wasn't it?" Somchai's calm cracked, his fingers trembling. "You owed Virote a debt, perhaps financial, perhaps personal, and agreed to silence Aaron, staging the knife to mask the true method." Somchai's head bowed, his silence a confession, much like a Willoughby Green doctor's admission after a patient's death. Clara, Miss Marple noted, was not innocent. "Mrs. Henshaw, your dispute with Aaron over the jade pendant was no coincidence. He sold it to you, knowing it was stolen, linking you to the smuggling ring. Your desperation to save your shop drove you to silence him, didn't it? You knew of Virote's dealings and hoped to profit." Clara's face crumpled, her denial weak. "I only wanted my shop to survive," she whispered, echoing a Willoughby Green widow's plea over a stolen heirloom. "Elise and Martin," Miss Marple continued, "were entangled in their own scheme. Miss Dubois, your letter to Mr. Crane spoke of the statuette, not a warning, but a plan to steal it. You saw Aaron's deal as an opportunity, but Virote's actions overtook you." Elise's eyes filled with tears, and Martin, his bluster gone, nodded. "We thought we could outsmart them," he admitted. Their greed, Miss Marple thought, mirrored a Willoughby Green couple's failed blackmail plot, foiled by their own missteps. "The knife," she said, "found in Mr. Crane's room was a distraction, planted by Dr. Somchai to shift suspicion. Its lack of fingerprints betrays a careful hand, but the poison was the true weapon, administered days before." She recounted the clues: the locked box, holding the statuette's key, the boatman's sighting, the silk thread, the ledger, and Aaron's final words of betrayal. Virote orchestrated it all, she concluded, using Somchai's skill and Clara's complicity, while Elise and Martin's greed played into his hands. Virote, cornered, bolted toward the river, but Chai's officers seized him. Somchai, his resolve broken, confessed to administering the poison, hoping for leniency. "Virote threatened my family?" he said, his voice hollow. Clara, weeping, admitted knowing of the smuggling but denied murder. Elise and Martin, chastened, faced charges for conspiracy, their dreams of wealth shattered. Miss Marple watched, her expression serene, as Chai led them away. As the markets quieted, Miss Marple boarded a boat with Raymond, the river reflecting the fading lanterns. "Human nature," she said, "is the same, whether in Willoughby Green or Bangkok. Greed weaves the tightest webs, but truth cuts through." Raymond, awed, asked how she saw it all. "Observation, my dear," she replied, "and a touch of patience. People are careless with their secrets." Her knitting needles, retrieved at last, clicked softly, each stitch a testament to the truth unveiled in the twilight. The boat glided on, the market's glow fading behind them. And Miss Marple's thoughts turned to Willoughby Green, where roses awaited and new mysteries, no doubt, lurked in the hedgerows. The river whispered its farewell, carrying the echoes of a case closed, as Bangkok's lanterns burned bright in her memory.